How to Stay Calm and Positive in Life, Part 1. Hello, my friend. Here's something nobody tells you about modern life. You're not supposed to have it all figured out. Right now, as you're reading this, there's probably a voice in your head cataloging everything that's wrong. The project you're behind on, the relationship that feels off, the bank account that's thinner than you'd like, that dream you've been planning for 3 years but haven't started. And here's the kicker. Before you even opened your eyes this morning, your mind was already running its greatest hits compilation of worries, regrets, and what-ifs. Sound familiar? Here's what I need you to understand right now, and I mean really understand. This mental chaos isn't a sign that you're failing at life. It's a sign that you're human, living in a world that's basically designed to keep you stressed, scattered, and running on empty. But what if I told you there's a different way? Not some fake positivity where you paste on a smile and pretend everything's perfect. I'm talking about genuine, deep-down calm that doesn't disappear the second something goes wrong. I'm talking about the kind of positivity that isn't fragile. It's unshakable. Today, we're going on a journey together. Not the kind where I preach at you from some imaginary pedestal. The kind where I share what I've learned from falling flat on my face more times than I can count, from the moments that broke me and from the practices that actually put me back together, stronger than before. By the time we finish this conversation, you're going to have a complete roadmap for transforming your inner world. These aren't theories I read in a book. These are battle-tested strategies that have helped me and thousands of others go from constantly overwhelmed to genuinely at peace. So get comfortable, maybe grab something to drink, and let's dive in. Because your transformation starts right here, right now. The control paradox. Why trying harder makes was happening next week, next month, next was happening next week, next month, next year. I had backup plans for my backup plans. I color-coded my calendar. I lost sleep over scenarios that hadn't happened yet and probably never would. And you know what all that control got me? Anxiety attacks in the grocery store, a constant knot in my stomach, and the overwhelming feeling that no matter how hard I tried, everything was always one wrong move away from complete disaster. Here's the mind-bending truth I eventually learned. The tighter you grip life, the more it slips through your fingers. Think about holding sand at the beach. Squeeze it tight, and it pours out between your fingers. Hold it gently, and it stays put. Life works exactly the same way. Most of us are walking around trying to be the screenwriter, director, and star of a movie, where we're actually just meant to play one role, ourselves. We exhaust ourselves trying to control our careers, our relationships, what people think of us, the traffic, the weather, our own thoughts, even our dreams. But here's the brutal reality check. The energy you spend trying to control the uncontrollable is the exact same energy that's keeping you anxious, exhausted, and miserable. Let me paint you a picture. About 2 years ago, I was driving to an important meeting. I left early because I'm that person, always prepared, always on time, always in control. Then I hit construction traffic, not just slow traffic, dead stop, everyone turning off their engines traffic. I could feel my chest tightening. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I was checking my phone every 30 seconds, calculating and recalculating arrival times, composing apology texts in my head. My heart was racing like I was running a marathon, but I was literally sitting still. And then something clicked. I looked around at all the other drivers. Some were on phone calls. Some were singing along to music. One guy was actually reading a book. Don't try that at home. And I realized we were all in the exact same traffic jam. The only difference was how we were experiencing it. That's when I asked myself a question that changed everything. What can I actually control right now? The traffic? Nope. The meeting start time? Already set. Whether people would be annoyed I was late? Not my call. But you know what I could control? My breathing, my thoughts. Whether I spent this time making myself miserable or finding a way to make it bearable, maybe even useful. So I took a deep breath. I put on a podcast I'd been meaning to listen to, and I made a decision. I was going to stop fighting reality and start working with it. Something incredible happened. My heart rate slowed down. My shoulders dropped away from my ears. I was still going to be late. That didn't change. But I wasn't torturing myself about it anymore. This is what I call the sphere of influence. And understanding it will transform your entire relationship with stress. Imagine you're standing in the middle of two circles. The inner circle represents everything you have direct power over: your actions, your reactions, your effort, your attitude, how you treat people, what you choose to focus on, how you spend your time. The outer circle is everything else: other people's opinions, the past, the future, the economy, traffic, weather, how your boss feels today, whether your partner texts back immediately. Here's what most people do, and maybe you do this too. They spend 90% of their mental energy worrying about the outer circle while completely ignoring the inner circle where their actual power lives. They stress about whether their coworker likes them instead of focusing on doing great work. They worry about what might go wrong next month instead of making good choices today. They try to change their friend's entire personality instead of just communicating better themselves. But here's the magic. When you pour all your energy into your inner circle, into what you can actually control, your influence naturally expands. When you focus on being your best self, you positively impact everyone around you. When you control your reactions, you often influence how situations unfold. When you stop forcing outcomes and start focusing on your effort, better outcomes tend to follow naturally. I learned this lesson the hard way during the most stressful job I've ever had. My manager was unpredictable, happy one day, furious the next, with no pattern I could identify. The company was going through constant restructuring. I felt like I was standing on quicksand, and every time I tried to steady myself, I just sank deeper. I spent months trying to predict what would happen next. Would there be layoffs? Would my role change? Should I start looking for another job? I was exhausted from trying to read tea leaves and control outcomes that were completely out of my hands. Then one evening, I sat down with a blank piece of paper and drew those two circles. I listed everything I was stressed about, and I forced myself to be honest about which circle each item belonged in. The results were shocking. Almost everything on my list was in the outer circle. Things I literally could not control, no matter how much I worried about them. So, I made a radical decision. I would focus exclusively on my inner circle and let the rest unfold however it needed to. I stopped trying to predict my boss's moods and just focused on doing excellent work. I stopped rehearsing worst-case scenarios about the company's future and started building skills that would serve me no matter what happened. I stopped trying to control things that were never mine to control. Within 4 months, I got promoted. Not because I tried to manipulate the outcome, but because I focused entirely on what I could control: my effort, my attitude, my growth. But here's what matters more than the promotion. Those 4 months were the most peaceful I'd experienced in years. Instead of living in constant anxiety about the future, I was present. Instead of feeling powerless, I felt capable. Instead of exhausting myself fighting reality, I was working with it. This principle applies everywhere. In relationships, you can't control whether someone loves you back, but you can control how lovingly you show up. In your career, you can't control whether you get promoted, but you can control the quality of work you produce every single day. In your health, you can't control your genetics, but you can control your daily habits. The beautiful freedom in this approach is that you stop wasting energy on battles you can never win. You stop lying awake, replaying conversations you can't change. You stop rehearsing scenarios that may never happen. You start sleeping better, thinking clearer, and feeling genuinely calm. But let me be crystal clear. This isn't about becoming passive or giving up on your dreams. It's about becoming strategically powerful instead of randomly reactive. It's about channeling your energy where it can actually make a difference. When you truly accept what's outside your control, you free up massive amounts of energy to focus on what you can influence. And that's where real transformation happens. The gratitude revolution, finding gold in the ordinary. Now, let's talk about gratitude, but I'm going to flip everything you think you know about it on its head. Most people treat gratitude like a homework assignment. They make a list of good things: family, health, roof over their head, and then they move on with their day. That's nice, it's fine, but it's not going to create the deep, lasting shift we're after. Real gratitude, the kind that actually transforms how you experience life, isn't about listing your blessings. It's about training your brain to find treasure in unexpected places. Let me tell you about my friend Emma. 3 years ago, she lost her job. Not just any job, a position she'd held for 15 years. Same desk, same routine, same colleagues who'd become like family. Suddenly, it was all gone. For the first month, she was a mess. Angry at her former employer, terrified about money, convinced her career was over at 42 years old. Every morning she'd wake up to that sick feeling in her stomach, the one that whispers, "Your life is falling apart." But then something shifted. Emma started asking herself a different question, one that felt almost ridiculous at first. What can I find to be grateful for in this situation? Not grateful that she lost her job. That would be denial. But grateful within the experience of losing her job. And here's what she discovered. For 15 years, she'd been so comfortable in that job that she'd stopped growing. She'd been playing it safe, collecting a paycheck, but slowly dying inside from boredom and lack of challenge. The job loss forced her to update her skills. It gave her time to reconnect with her teenage kids, who'd been basically raising themselves while she worked overtime. It made her realize she'd been staying out of fear, not passion. 8 months later, Emma started her own consulting business. 2 years after that, she's making more money than ever and doing work she actually loves. She told me recently, "Getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. But I never would have seen it that way without looking for the gifts hidden inside the pain." This is what I call revolutionary gratitude, the practice of finding value and meaning even in life's toughest moments. It's not about toxic positivity or pretending bad things are good. It's about training your brain to search for the lessons, the unexpected benefits, and the hidden opportunities that almost always exist alongside our struggles. Here's a practice that will change your life if you stick with it. Every night before bed, ask yourself 3 questions. 1. What difficulty did I face today, and what did it teach me? Maybe you had a conflict with your partner. Instead of just feeling bad about it, ask what it revealed. Maybe it showed you where you need to communicate more clearly. Maybe it taught you about a boundary you need to set. 2. What didn't go as planned today, and how might that have protected me or redirected me toward something better? Maybe you missed your train and had to take a later one. Instead of just being annoyed, consider. Maybe you avoided an accident. Maybe you met someone interesting on the later train. Maybe you needed that extra 10 minutes to decompress. 3. What person frustrated me today, and how did they help me grow? Maybe your coworker criticized your idea. Instead of just feeling defensive, recognize. They helped you practice not taking things personally. They pushed you to refine your thinking. They showed you who has your back and who doesn't. This practice trains your brain to look for opportunity in every situation. And when you consistently practice revolutionary gratitude, you develop what I call benefit-finding vision, the ability to spot silver linings even in the darkest clouds. I remember working with someone named Alex, who was going through a brutal divorce. Bitter doesn't even begin to describe how he felt. He was convinced his life was ruined, that he'd wasted the best years of his life, that he'd never recover. I challenged him to find 3 things he could be grateful for related to his divorce. He looked at me like I'd grown a second head. But over the next few weeks, something remarkable happened. Alex started noticing things he'd been blind to before. He realized the divorce was teaching him to be independent in ways he never had been. He was learning to cook, manage his own finances, take care of himself. He was reconnecting with friends he'd lost touch with during his marriage. He was rediscovering hobbies he'd abandoned. Most importantly, he was learning crucial lessons about communication, boundaries, and what he actually wanted in a relationship. Lessons he'd never learned if things had kept going the way they were. 6 months later, Alex said something that still gives me chills. "I'm not glad my marriage ended, but I'm deeply grateful for who I'm becoming because of it." That's the power of revolutionary gratitude. It doesn't change what happens to you, but it completely transforms how you experience what happens to you. It turns you from a victim into a student, constantly learning and growing from every experience life throws your way. But revolutionary gratitude goes even deeper. It's also about appreciating the ordinary moments we usually take for granted. Right now, your heart is beating without you having to think about it. Your lungs are breathing. You can see these words, which means you have the gift of sight. You have access to information, which means you're educated enough to read. You're probably not worried about where your next meal will come from. When you really stop and think about it, you're already extraordinarily wealthy in ways that have nothing to do with money. This morning, I watched the sunrise while drinking my coffee. Just sat there, watching the sky turn from dark blue to pink to gold. That moment cost me nothing, required nothing from me, and it was absolutely beautiful. How many sunrises have I missed because I was too busy scrolling my phone or rushing to the next thing? Thousands, probably. Gratitude isn't just about the big things. It's about waking up to the miracle of ordinary moments that we're normally too distracted to notice. Your warm shower this morning, the taste of your coffee, the fact that you can walk, talk, think, feel, the smile from a stranger, the sound of rain, the smell of fresh air after a storm. These small pleasures are available to you every single day, completely free. But most of us rush past them, always focused on what we don't have, what's wrong, what needs to be different. When you start truly seeing and appreciating what's already here, gratitude stops being something you practice and starts being your natural way of experiencing life. And here's the beautiful secret. When you live in gratitude, contentment becomes your default state. You stop needing everything to be perfect before you can feel peace. You realize you don't need anything to be different to experience joy right now, in this moment. Part 2. The Emotional Reset Button. How to change your state in 60 seconds. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt completely hijacked by your emotions? Maybe it was last week when someone cut you off in traffic and suddenly you were furious for the next hour. Maybe it was yesterday when your partner made an offhand comment and you spiraled into hurt and defensiveness. Maybe it's happening right now. There's some feeling sitting in your chest that you can't seem to shake. Here's what most people don't realize. You're not your emotions. You're the sky, and emotions are just weather passing through. I know that sounds poetic and maybe a little weird, but stay with me because this distinction is absolutely crucial. Most of us treat emotions like they're permanent states. When we're angry, we think, I am angry, as if anger is our identity. When we're sad, we believe, I am sad, as if sadness defines who we are. When we're anxious, we're convinced, I am anxious, as if anxiety is a fixed part of our personality. But what if I told you that's completely backwards? You're not the anger. You're the person experiencing anger. You're not the sadness. You're the consciousness noticing sadness moving through you. You're not the anxiety. You're the awareness observing anxiety. This might seem like semantics, but this shift in perspective changed my entire relationship with difficult emotions. Let me show you why it matters. About a year ago, I was preparing for a presentation that could make or break a major project I'd been working on for months. The night before, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing with worst-case scenarios. My chest felt tight. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw myself freezing up, forgetting my words, watching people's faces fill with disappointment. The old me would have believed those feelings meant something was wrong with me. I'd have fought the anxiety, tried to force it away, gotten frustrated when it wouldn't leave, and ended up even more anxious about being anxious. But instead, I tried something different. I stopped identifying as the anxiety and started observing it with curiosity. I literally said to myself, "Interesting. There's anxiety present right now. I wonder what it's trying to tell me." And you know what happened? The moment I stopped resisting the feeling and started observing it, something shifted. The anxiety didn't disappear completely, but it loosened its grip. I could breathe a little deeper, think a little clearer. I realized the anxiety wasn't my enemy. It was just my brain's way of saying, "Hey, this presentation matters to you. Maybe run through it one more time." So that's what I did. I got up, rehearsed the opening, felt more prepared, and went to bed. The anxiety had served its purpose. Now let me teach you the most powerful emotional reset technique I've ever learned. I call it the CALM method, and it can shift your emotional state in less than 60 seconds. C. Catch the emotion. The moment you notice you're getting overwhelmed, pause. Just stop whatever you're doing and acknowledge what's happening. Say it out loud if you can. "I'm noticing anger right now," or "I'm feeling anxious," or "there's frustration here." This simple act of naming the emotion already creates distance between you and it. You're no longer the emotion. You're the noticer of the emotion. A. Accept without judgment. Don't fight it. Don't shame yourself for feeling it. Don't tell yourself you shouldn't feel this way. Just accept that this is what's present right now. I like to say, it makes complete sense that I'm feeling this way given the situation. That one sentence dissolves so much internal resistance. L. Let your body release. Emotions live in your body, not just your mind. So take a deep breath. In through your nose for 4 counts, hold for 4, then exhale through your mouth for 6 counts. That longer exhale is crucial because it activates your parasympathetic nervous system, your body's natural calm-down mechanism. Do this 3 times. M. Move forward mindfully. Now that you've created some space between yourself and the emotion, ask, what's the most helpful response right now? How do I want to show up in this moment? Notice I didn't say, what should I do? I said, how do I want to show up? That's because this isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional. I started using the CALM method during a really difficult conversation with my sister. We were arguing about something related to our aging parents, and I could feel myself getting defensive and angry. Instead of letting the anger take over and saying something I'd regret, I paused. I caught the emotion. I'm really angry right now. I accepted it. Makes sense. I feel like she's not hearing me. I took 3 deep breaths. Then I moved forward. I want to actually resolve this, not just win the argument. That 30-second pause changed everything. Instead of escalating the fight, I was able to say, can we start over? I don't think either of us is really listening right now. The conversation didn't become magically perfect, but it became productive instead of destructive. All because I learned to reset my emotional state instead of being controlled by it. But here's something most people don't know about emotions. The physical sensation of any emotion lasts only about 90 seconds in your body. Research shows this. The actual chemical response, the adrenaline, the cortisol, all of it, runs its course in about 1.5 minutes. So if you're angry for an hour, sad for a day, or anxious for a week, It's not because the emotion is still happening. It's because you're re-triggering it with your thoughts. Every time you replay the argument in your mind, you recreate the anger. Every time you tell yourself the story of why you're sad, you regenerate the sadness. Every time you imagine worst-case scenarios, you reproduce the anxiety. This is incredibly empowering information because it means no matter how intense an emotion feels, if you can just observe it without feeding it, it will naturally begin to fade. I experienced this during a job interview that went terribly wrong. I completely blanked on a crucial question and gave a rambling, incoherent answer. The moment I left the building, shame crashed over me like a wave. Old me would have spent the next week mentally replaying that moment, beating myself up, telling myself I'd ruined my career. But instead, I just let the feeling be there. I felt the heat in my face, the tightness in my stomach, the urge to disappear, and I just breathed through it, didn't fight it, didn't feed it with stories about how I'm terrible at interviews or I'll never get hired. Within about 3 minutes, the intensity had dropped by half. Within 10 minutes, it was just a dull ache. Within an hour, I was able to think about it rationally and even laugh a little at how nervous I'd been. The emotion moved through me instead of getting stuck in me. But here's the other side of this coin. Most people are great at dwelling on negative emotions and terrible at savoring positive ones. You'll replay an embarrassing moment for 3 days, but you'll forget a compliment in 3 minutes. You'll ruminate on what went wrong for hours, but barely notice when something goes right. So here's a practice that will literally rewire your brain for positivity. When you experience a moment of joy, peace, love, or gratitude, pause and really absorb it. Take a mental snapshot. Notice what's happening in your body. Maybe your shoulders relax. Your breathing deepens. You feel warmth in your chest. Stay with that feeling for at least 20 seconds. Really let it sink in. This isn't just feel-good advice. This is neuroscience. You're making deposits in your emotional bank account. The more positive moments you consciously savor and store, the more emotional resources you have to draw on during difficult times. Last week, I was having coffee with a friend I hadn't seen in months. We were laughing about something ridiculous, and I had this moment of just pure contentment. My friend was there. The coffee was good. The sun was streaming through the window. Everything felt right. And instead of just moving past that moment to the next topic of conversation, I paused. I really felt it. I thought, this is what life is about. This moment, right here. That 20-second pause created a memory that I can now access anytime I need to remember that life is good, that I'm loved, that simple moments can be perfect. This is how you build emotional resilience, not by avoiding negative emotions, but by learning to move through them skillfully and amplify positive ones intentionally. Your emotions aren't your enemy. They're information. They're energy in motion. And when you learn to work with them instead of being controlled by them, you unlock a level of calm and freedom most people never experience. Rewriting your inner narrative, the story you tell yourself. Okay, real talk. The most important conversation you'll ever have is the one happening in your own head right now. That voice. You know the one I'm talking about. The constant commentary running in the background of your mind, judging everything you do, analyzing every situation, predicting outcomes, replaying moments from the past. For most people, that inner voice sounds like their harshest critic. It's the voice that says, "You're not good enough. Everyone's judging you. You're going to mess this up. You always do this wrong. Why did you say that? That was so stupid." This voice is so familiar, so constant, that most people don't even realize it's there. It's like living next to train tracks. Eventually, you stop hearing the trains. But here's the truth bomb. That critical inner voice isn't actually you. It's a collection of old programming. Things your parents said when you were 5. Comments from a teacher in 3rd grade. Messages from society about how you should be. The voice of every fear and insecurity you've ever absorbed. The real you, the conscious, aware, wise part of you, has the power to observe this voice and choose whether to believe it or not. Let me tell you about my friend Marcus. Super talented photographer, incredible eye for detail. Clients loved his work. But Marcus was convinced he was a fraud. Every time a client complimented his photos, his inner voice said, "They're just being nice. They'll figure out you're not actually that good." When he landed a big project, instead of celebrating, his inner voice said, "You got lucky. You're going to disappoint them." When he made a small mistake, because humans make mistakes, his inner voice said, "See? You're terrible at this. You're going to lose everything." I asked Marcus to do something that felt weird at first. Spend a week just noticing and writing down his self-talk. He was shocked by what he discovered. He was essentially verbally abusing himself all day long. He was saying things to himself that he would never say to another human being. He was his own worst bully. The first step in rewriting your inner narrative is becoming aware of the current story. So here's what I want you to do. For the next few days, pay attention to your self-talk, especially when things go wrong. What does your inner voice say when you make a mistake? What story does it tell when you face a challenge? What commentary does it provide when you look in the mirror? Don't try to change anything yet. Just notice. Awareness is the foundation of transformation. Once you become aware of your inner critic, you can start to challenge it. Most negative self-talk crumbles under even basic scrutiny. For example, if your inner voice says, "I always mess things up," ask yourself, is that actually true? Can I think of times I handled things well? Usually, always and never are red flags. Your inner critic loves absolutes because they sound dramatic and convincing, but they're rarely accurate. Your inner critic takes one mistake and creates a sweeping narrative about your entire character. It takes one rejection and decides you're fundamentally flawed. It takes one bad day and concludes your whole life is falling apart. But here's the beautiful thing. Once you recognize these distorted thought patterns, you can start rewriting them. Instead of, "I always mess things up," you can say, "I made a mistake, and that's how I learn and grow." Instead of, "I'm not smart enough," you can say, "I'm learning and improving every single day." Instead of, "Everyone's judging me," you can say, "Most people are too focused on their own lives to spend much time thinking about me. And anyone who judges me harshly is revealing more about themselves than about me." Marcus started practicing this reframing consistently. When his inner critic said, "Your work isn't good enough," he'd respond, My work is continuously improving, and my clients choose me because they value what I create. When the voice said, "You're going to lose this client," he'd counter with, "I'm going to focus on doing excellent work and communicating clearly." Within a few months, Marcus's whole energy shifted. His anxiety decreased. His confidence grew. And ironically, his business actually expanded because he wasn't sabotaging himself with self-doubt anymore. But rewriting your inner story goes beyond just challenging negative thoughts. It's about consciously choosing empowering narratives about yourself and your life. Instead of seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances, you can choose to see yourself as someone who learns from every experience. Instead of focusing on your weaknesses, you can choose to acknowledge your strengths and how you're developing them. Here's a powerful exercise. Write yourself a letter from your future self, the person you're becoming through all your growth and learning. What would that wise, confident, successful version of you say right now? What encouragement would they offer? What perspective would they share about your current challenges? When I did this exercise, my future self told present me, the struggles you're facing right now are building the exact strengths you'll need for what's coming next. Stop rushing. Stop doubting. You're exactly where you need to be. That perspective shift was everything. Suddenly, my challenges weren't evidence that I was failing. They were evidence that I was growing. This isn't about toxic positivity or denying reality. It's about choosing stories that empower you instead of stories that diminish you. It's about becoming the author of your own narrative instead of letting old programming write your story for you. That inner voice that once criticized and doubted can become your greatest ally. It can become the voice that encourages you to take healthy risks, reminds you of your strengths during difficult times, helps you learn from mistakes without shame, celebrates your progress instead of only noticing what's not perfect yet. You get to choose which voice gets the microphone in your mind. Living right here, right now. The present moment revolution. Here's a question that might sting a little. Where do you actually spend most of your time? And I don't mean physically, I mean mentally. Where does your mind live? If you're like most people, you're either stuck in yesterday or racing toward tomorrow. You're replaying conversations you wish had gone differently. You're obsessing over mistakes from last week. You're worrying about next month's bills. You're mentally rehearsing scenarios that haven't happened and probably never will. Meanwhile, life is happening right now. Your child is trying to show you something right now. The sun is shining right now. Someone you love is sitting across from you right now. Opportunities are presenting themselves right now. But if your mind is stuck in the past or sprinting toward the future, you're missing all of it. This isn't just philosophical. It has real consequences for your peace of mind. Think about it. Anxiety is almost always about the future, things that haven't happened yet and might never happen. Depression is often about the past, losses, regrets, things that can't be changed. But peace, calm, and genuine contentment exist only in the present moment. Let me tell you about my friend Rachel. She was constantly stressed about her teenage son, lying awake worrying, will he get into a good college? Is he making good choices? Will he be okay when he's an adult? One day I asked her, How's your relationship with him right now, in this actual moment? She paused. Actually, it's really good. We had a great conversation this morning. He's been more open lately. I can see him growing into this amazing person. So the problem isn't what's happening now, I said. The problem is what might happen later. Rachel realized she was so busy worrying about future scenarios that she was missing the opportunity to actually enjoy and strengthen her relationship with her son in the present. This is what I call time travel syndrome, the habit of mentally leaving the present to visit either the past or the future. And here's the irony. The more time you spend worrying about the future, the less present you are to actually create the future you want. I used to be the worst at this. I'd be having dinner with friends, but my mind would be running through tomorrow's to-do list. I'd be on a walk in nature, but I'd be replaying an argument from earlier that day. I'd be playing with my niece, but I'd be stressing about a work deadline. And then one day, my niece said something that broke my heart. "Uncle, you're here, but you're not really here." She was 5 years old, and she could tell I wasn't actually present with her. That moment woke me up. How much of my life had I missed because I was mentally somewhere else? So I started practicing what I call radical presence, the art of being fully here, right now, as often as possible. And let me teach you the simplest, most powerful technique I know for anchoring yourself in the present moment. It's called the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique. Whenever you notice your mind racing toward the future or getting stuck in the past, do this. Notice 5 things you can see right now. Really look at them. Their colors, shapes, textures, not just glancing, actually seeing. Notice 4 things you can physically feel: the temperature of the air on your skin, the texture of your clothes, the surface you're sitting or standing on, your feet on the ground. Notice 3 things you can hear: maybe traffic outside, maybe the hum of electronics, maybe your own breathing. Really listen. Notice 2 things you can smell. If you can't smell anything distinct, notice the quality of the air. Notice 1 thing you can taste, even if it's just the taste in your mouth right now. This simple exercise takes about 60 seconds, and it immediately pulls you out of your head and into your actual lived experience. I use this technique multiple times a day now. When I catch myself worrying about a presentation I have to give next week, 5-4-3-2-1. When I'm replaying an awkward conversation from yesterday, 5-4-3-2-1. When I feel anxiety building about things I can't control, 5-4-3-2-1. It works because it engages your senses, which only exist in the present moment. Your eyes can only see what's here now. Your ears can only hear what's happening now. Your body can only feel what's touching it now. Another practice I love is what I call single-task meditation. Pick one routine activity, brushing your teeth, washing dishes, making coffee, and do it with complete attention. Instead of letting your mind wander or scrolling your phone, bring full awareness to the sensory experience. When you're brushing your teeth, notice the taste of the toothpaste, the feeling of the bristles, the circular motion of your hand. When you're washing dishes, feel the temperature of the water. Notice the scent of the soap. Hear the sound of water running. This might sound boring, but it's actually incredibly peaceful. You'll be amazed at how much more enjoyable even mundane activities become when you give them your full attention. But here's the deepest truth about present moment living. Right now, in this very moment, there are countless things to appreciate if you're willing to notice them. The fact that your heart is beating without you having to think about it. The miracle that your lungs are breathing automatically. That you can see, hear, think, feel. That you have food to eat and a place to sleep. That you're alive. Most people are so focused on what's missing, what's wrong, or what needs to be different that they miss the extraordinary gift of what's already here. I learned this during one of the hardest periods of my life. I was dealing with financial stress, relationship problems, career uncertainty, the whole package. One evening, I was sitting outside feeling completely overwhelmed when I noticed the sunset. It was absolutely stunning, layers of orange and pink stretching across the entire sky, and I realized I hadn't really looked at a sunset in months. I'd been so consumed by my problems that I'd been blind to the beauty happening all around me every single day. As I sat there watching the colors change, something in me shifted. My problems didn't change. I still had all the same challenges. But I felt different, calmer, more connected, more grateful. That moment taught me that peace isn't the absence of problems. It's the presence of awareness. It's the ability to find stillness in the center of the storm, beauty in the midst of chaos, gratitude even when life isn't going according to plan. When you learn to live in the present moment, you discover that you don't need everything to be perfect to experience peace right now. You don't need anything to be different to feel grateful right now. All you need is to wake up to what's already here. Part 3. Finding Your Voice, the Art of Authentic Expression. Let me tell you something that nobody talks about enough. One of the biggest sources of inner chaos is living as a muted version of yourself. Think about it. How many times today did you bite your tongue when you wanted to speak up? How many thoughts did you swallow because you were afraid of how people would react? How many times did you smile and nod when you actually disagreed? Most of us are walking around with this massive pressure building inside, like a champagne bottle that's been shaken but never opened. We suppress our thoughts, hide our feelings, dim our personality, all in the name of keeping the peace or fitting in. But here's what that pressure does to you. It manifests as anxiety, resentment, depression, or sudden emotional explosions that seem to come out of nowhere. I know this because I used to be the world champion of people-pleasing. I said yes when I meant no. I laughed at jokes I didn't find funny. I agreed with opinions I actually opposed. I became whoever I thought people wanted me to be. And you know what? I was miserable. I felt like an actor who'd been playing the same role for so long that I'd forgotten who I actually was underneath the performance. The script was supposed to be my life, but somewhere along the way, I'd started reading from someone else's lines. The breaking point came at a family dinner. My uncle made a comment that I found genuinely offensive, not just to me, but to an entire group of people. And like always, I smiled politely and said nothing. But inside, I was furious, not just at him, but at myself for not having the courage to speak up. I spent the rest of that evening seething, and that night, lying in bed, I had this realization. I'd been doing this my entire life, swallowing my words, hiding my opinions, pretending to be someone I wasn't, all to avoid potential conflict or rejection. No wonder I felt anxious and disconnected. I was living as a watered-down version of myself. Self-expression doesn't mean you have to share every thought with every person. It's not about being confrontational or oversharing. It's about creating healthy outlets for your inner world and learning to show up authentically in the relationships that matter. One of the most powerful forms of self-expression is journaling. But I'm not talking about, "Dear Diary, here's what I did today." I'm talking about raw, uncensored, stream of consciousness writing where you dump everything in your mind onto paper without worrying about grammar, spelling, or whether it makes sense. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Write continuously about whatever is on your mind. Don't edit yourself. Don't worry about being positive or negative. Just let it flow. Write about your fears, your dreams, your frustrations, your hopes. The things you're angry about, the things you're grateful for, the random thoughts bouncing around your skull. The key is to write without judgment or censorship. This practice is incredibly therapeutic because it gives your inner world permission to exist outside your head. When you hold thoughts and feelings inside, they loop and intensify. But when you express them, even just on paper, they lose their emotional charge. I started this practice 3 years ago, and it's changed my life. Some mornings, I write angry rants about things that frustrate me. Some mornings I write grateful reflections about things I appreciate. Some mornings I write complete nonsense that helps me process emotions I don't even have words for yet. And here's the beautiful part. Nobody ever has to read it. This is purely for you. It's your safe space to be completely honest without fear of judgment or consequences. Another profound form of self-expression is creativity. And before you say, "I'm not creative," let me stop you right there. Every human being is creative. Creativity isn't just about making art or music. It's about bringing something new into existence. A garden, a meal, a solution to a problem, a way of arranging your space. I worked with someone named Lisa, who was going through a devastating breakup. She'd never considered herself creative, but I encouraged her to find some form of artistic expression to process her emotions. Lisa decided to try painting, even though she hadn't touched a paintbrush since elementary school. At first, she was frustrated because her paintings didn't look like anything. But I encouraged her to focus on the process, not the product, to let her emotions flow through the colors and brush strokes. Something remarkable happened. As Lisa painted, she found herself releasing emotions she didn't even know she was carrying. Some paintings were dark and chaotic, angry reds and blacks expressing her pain. Others were surprisingly light and hopeful, soft blues and yellows revealing parts of herself that were excited about starting fresh. The paintings weren't masterpieces, but they didn't need to be. They were a bridge between Lisa's inner world and external reality. They gave her a way to express complex emotions she couldn't put into words. And in the process, she reconnected with a creative part of herself she'd neglected for years. Physical movement is another powerful form of self-expression. Your body holds emotions and energy, and sometimes the best way to release what's stuck inside is through movement. This doesn't mean you have to become a dancer or athlete. Put on music and move however feels good. Take a walk and let your mind wander. Do stretches that help you reconnect with your physical self. I dance in my living room probably 3 times a week. Not rehearsed choreography, just free-form movement to music I love. Sometimes it's wild and energetic. Sometimes it's slow and contemplative. But it always helps me process whatever I'm carrying. And nobody's watching, so who cares if I look ridiculous? But here's the scariest and most important form of self-expression: sharing your authentic thoughts and feelings with the people closest to you. This is terrifying because it involves vulnerability and the risk of rejection. But it's also what transforms superficial connections into meaningful relationships. Start small. Practice sharing one genuine thought or feeling each day with someone you trust. Maybe it's telling a friend you appreciated something they did. Maybe it's respectfully disagreeing with a coworker. Maybe it's letting your partner know something's been bothering you. The key is to express yourself from a place of authenticity, not from a desire to control outcomes. You're not sharing to get a specific response or change someone's behavior. You're sharing because your thoughts and feelings matter and deserve to exist in the world. I remember the first time I told a close friend that something they'd said hurt my feelings. My hands were shaking. I was convinced they'd get defensive or angry. But instead, they thanked me for being honest and apologized. They had no idea their comment was hurtful and appreciated knowing, so they could be more thoughtful. That experience taught me that most people actually appreciate authentic communication more than the polite facade we hide behind. When you express yourself genuinely, you give others permission to do the same. And that mutual authenticity creates the deep connections that nourish the soul. The beautiful thing about authentic self-expression is it creates a positive feedback loop. The more you express your true self leads to, the more comfortable you become with who you are leads to. The less you need others' approval leads to, the freer you become to express yourself authentically. This freedom from constantly seeking external validation is one of the greatest sources of inner peace available. When you know your worth isn't dependent on others' opinions, you can navigate life with a calm confidence that's unshakable. You stop performing and start living. You stop hiding and start showing up. You stop dimming your light and start shining, and that's when life gets really good. The Forgiveness Revolution: Setting Yourself Free. If I told you there was one practice that could free you from years of emotional baggage, improve every relationship in your life, reduce your stress levels, and dramatically increase your inner peace, would you be interested? That practice is forgiveness, but not the kind you're thinking of. Most people misunderstand forgiveness. They think it means excusing bad behavior, letting people off the hook, or pretending hurtful things didn't happen. They think forgiveness is something you do for other people, a gift you give to those who wronged you. But here's the truth that will change everything. Forgiveness isn't about other people at all. Forgiveness is about setting yourself free from the prison of resentment, anger, and victimhood. It's about choosing your own peace over your desire for revenge or justice. When you hold on to anger and resentment, you're essentially drinking poison and hoping the other person gets sick. You're allowing someone who hurt you in the past to continue hurting you in the present. Every time you replay the offense in your mind, every time you tell the story of how you were wronged, every time you fantasize about getting even, you're giving that person power over your emotional state. Let me tell you how I learned this lesson the hard way. Several years ago, a close friend betrayed my trust in a way that cost me both money and reputation. They shared confidential information about a project I was working on, and it damaged relationships with people I cared about. I was furious, hurt, and I felt completely justified in my anger. For months, I carried this resentment like a backpack full of rocks. I'd wake up thinking about what they'd done. I'd spend hours planning hypothetical confrontations. I told the story to anyone who would listen, each time feeling the anger fresh and raw. But gradually, I started noticing something disturbing. My former friend seemed to be moving on just fine while I was stuck in a constant state of anger and stress. They were sleeping peacefully while I was lying awake replaying scenarios. They were focusing on their future while I was trapped in the past. I realized my resentment wasn't hurting them at all. It was only hurting me. I was paying the price for their mistake, not just the original damage, but the ongoing emotional and physical toll of carrying all that anger. That's when I made a decision that felt completely counterintuitive. I chose to forgive them, not because they deserved it, not because they apologized, but because I deserved to be free. Forgiveness doesn't happen overnight, especially for deep hurts. It's a process, not a single event. But the moment I decided to forgive, something shifted inside me. The heavy feeling in my chest began to lift. The obsessive thoughts about revenge began to fade. I started sleeping better. I started feeling more like myself again. And here's what really surprised me. Forgiving that friend wasn't the end of the forgiveness journey. It was just the beginning. Because as I learned to forgive others, I discovered the person I most needed to forgive was myself. We're often our own harshest critics. We carry guilt and shame for mistakes we made years, sometimes decades ago. We replay our failures, criticize our choices, punish ourselves for not being perfect. This self-directed resentment is just as toxic as holding grudges against others, maybe even more so. I worked with someone named Daniel, who'd been carrying guilt for 15 years about a business failure that cost his family their savings. He'd since rebuilt financially, but he couldn't forgive himself for the mistake. This guilt was poisoning everything. He sabotaged relationships because he didn't feel worthy of love. He turned down opportunities because he didn't think he deserved success. He lived in constant low-level depression because he couldn't forgive himself for being human. Working with Daniel on self-forgiveness was gradual. We had to help him see the difference between accountability and self-torture. Accountability meant acknowledging the seriousness of what happened, learning from it, and committing to different choices moving forward. Self-torture meant punishing himself indefinitely for a mistake that couldn't be undone. The breakthrough came when Daniel realized his refusal to forgive himself wasn't serving anyone. It wasn't making him a better person or preventing future mistakes. It was just keeping him stuck in shame and preventing him from contributing positively to the world. Once Daniel forgave himself, everything changed. He started mentoring young entrepreneurs, sharing the lessons he'd learned from his failure. He turned his mistake into a mission, using his experience to help others avoid similar pitfalls. This is one of the most beautiful aspects of forgiveness. It transforms pain into purpose. When you forgive others, you free yourself to love more fully. When you forgive yourself, you free yourself to become who you're meant to be. But forgiveness goes beyond just the big hurts. It also includes the daily practice of letting go of small irritations. The driver who cut you off, the colleague who took credit for your idea, the friend who canceled plans last minute. These minor offenses can accumulate and create a background level of resentment that steals your peace. Practice forgiveness in real time throughout your day. When someone does something that irritates you, instead of holding on to the feeling, consciously choose to let it go. I use what I call the release breath. When someone triggers anger or resentment, I take a deep breath and silently say, "I forgive you, and I free myself from carrying this hurt." Then I consciously release the tension in my body as I exhale. This simple practice prevents minor irritations from building into major resentments. It keeps your emotional slate clean and maintains your peace even when others behave poorly. The ultimate goal of forgiveness is freedom. Freedom from the past. Freedom from resentment. Freedom from needing others to be different for you to be happy. When you master forgiveness, you discover that your peace doesn't depend on how others treat you or how perfectly you navigate life. Your peace comes from your ability to release what cannot be changed and focus on what can. Boundaries, the secret to sustainable relationships. Here's something most people get completely backwards. Boundaries aren't walls that keep people out. They're guidelines that protect your energy while allowing healthy relationships to flourish. One of the fastest ways to destroy your inner peace is to live without clear boundaries. And I'm willing to bet most people struggling with anxiety, overwhelm, and resentment have one thing in common. They have terrible boundaries. They say yes when they mean no. They take on other people's problems as their own. They allow toxic behavior to continue. They sacrifice their own needs to avoid disappointing others. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Most of us were taught that having boundaries is selfish, that good people always put others first, and that saying no makes us mean or uncaring. But here's the truth. Having healthy boundaries doesn't make you selfish. It makes you sustainable. Think about airplane safety instructions. Put on your own oxygen mask before helping others. This isn't because you matter more than the person next to you. It's because you can't help anyone if you're unconscious. Similarly, you can't be genuinely helpful to others if you're burned out, resentful, and depleted from constantly giving more than you have to give. Let me tell you about my friend Jessica. She came to me on the verge of a breakdown. Jessica was a single mom working full-time while caring for her aging parents. Her ex called constantly to complain about his problems. Her sister regularly asked her to babysit. Her co-workers dumped their projects on her because she never said no. Her friends treated her like a free therapist. She was exhausted, resentful, and felt like everyone was taking advantage of her kindness. When I suggested she needed boundaries, her first response was, "But I can't let people down. What if they get angry? What if they don't like me anymore?" This is the fear that keeps most people trapped. The fear that saying no will damage relationships or make people think poorly of them. But here's what Jessica discovered. Healthy boundaries actually improve relationships by creating clarity, respect, and sustainability. The first type of boundary you need to master is the time boundary. Your time is your most precious resource. How you spend it determines the quality of your life. Yet many people treat their time like it's unlimited and available to anyone who asks. Time boundaries mean having clear guidelines about how you spend your time and communicating those guidelines to others. For Jessica, this meant telling her ex that she was only available to discuss their children and only during specific hours. It meant telling her sister she needed advance notice for babysitting and could only help twice a month. It meant leaving work at a reasonable hour instead of staying late to finish other people's projects. The second crucial boundary is the emotional boundary. This means taking responsibility for your own emotions while refusing to take responsibility for others' emotions. Many people are emotional sponges, absorbing the moods and feelings of everyone around them. Emotional boundaries mean recognizing when someone else's drama is affecting your emotional state and consciously choosing not to absorb it. It means being compassionate without becoming enmeshed. It means caring about others without carrying their emotional burdens as your own. I learned about emotional boundaries through a friendship with someone who was constantly in crisis. Every conversation was about their latest drama, their overwhelming problems, their terrible luck. I'd hang up feeling drained and depressed every time. At first, I thought being a good friend meant absorbing all their negativity and trying to fix their problems. But I gradually realized that my constant emotional availability wasn't actually helping them. It was enabling them to avoid taking responsibility while destroying my peace of mind. Setting an emotional boundary meant telling my friend I cared about them, but our conversations had become too negative for me to handle. I suggested they talk to a therapist and asked if we could focus more on positive topics. They didn't like the boundary at first, but ultimately it improved our friendship. They started therapy, and our conversations became more balanced. The third type of boundary is the energy boundary. Some people are energy vampires. They leave you feeling drained, exhausted, and depleted. Others are energy givers. They leave you feeling uplifted, inspired, and energized. Energy boundaries mean being intentional about who you spend time with and how much energy you invest in different relationships. This doesn't mean cutting off everyone going through hard times. It means recognizing the difference between temporary situations where someone needs extra support and chronic patterns where someone consistently takes more than they give. The fourth boundary is around your values and beliefs. This means being clear about what you stand for and not compromising your integrity to please others or avoid conflict. Value boundaries might mean declining to participate in gossip, even if everyone else is doing it. It might mean speaking up when someone makes a comment that conflicts with your beliefs. It might mean choosing not to participate in activities that violate your principles. Setting boundaries isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing practice that requires consistency and courage. People will test your boundaries, especially at first. They might get angry, try to guilt you, or negotiate your limits. This is normal, and doesn't mean your boundaries are wrong. The key is to remain calm, kind, and consistent. You don't need to justify your boundaries or convince anyone they're reasonable. A simple, "that doesn't work for me," or "I'm not available for that," is often sufficient. Remember, you teach people how to treat you by what you accept. When you consistently maintain healthy boundaries, you train people in your life to respect your time, energy, and needs. Those who truly care about you will adjust. Those who don't respect your boundaries reveal they were more interested in what you could do for them than in having a genuine relationship. Boundaries are how you protect your peace while still staying connected to the people you love. They're not selfish. They're self-preserving. And when you preserve yourself, you have so much more to give from a place of genuine abundance rather than resentful obligation. Part 4. The Power of Daily Reflection. Learning from your life. Here's something that blows my mind. Most people live their entire lives without ever actually learning from their experiences. They rush from one day to the next, one task to another, one crisis to the next crisis, never pausing to process, integrate, or extract wisdom from what they're going through. It's like reading a book and immediately forgetting every page the moment you turn it. You're consuming the experience, but you're not actually absorbing any of the lessons. This constant forward momentum might feel productive, but it's actually preventing the kind of deep learning that creates lasting change. Daily reflection is like hitting pause on life's chaos. It's the practice that transforms ordinary experiences into wisdom, confusion into clarity, and reactivity into intentionality. Most people think they don't have time for reflection, but the truth is, you can't afford not to reflect. Without reflection, you're doomed to repeat the same mistakes, miss valuable lessons, and live in constant reaction mode rather than conscious creation. Let me tell you how this practice completely changed my life. For years, I would collapse into bed each night feeling like the day had happened to me rather than feeling like I had actively participated in creating it. I'd wake up the next morning and repeat the same patterns, react to situations the same ways, make the same types of mistakes without even realizing it. But when I started dedicating just 10 minutes each evening to reflection, everything shifted. I began seeing patterns in my behavior. I identified triggers that threw me off balance. I recognized opportunities for growth I'd been missing. Most importantly, I started feeling like the author of my own life rather than just a character reacting to whatever happened. Effective reflection isn't just randomly thinking about your day. It's a structured practice that helps you extract maximum learning from your experiences. The key is asking yourself the right questions. Questions that prompt insight rather than just rehashing events. Here are the 3 foundational questions that form the core of transformative daily reflection. Question 1. What did I do well today? This question trains your brain to notice your successes, wise choices, and moments of growth. Most people are way better at remembering their mistakes than their victories, but focusing on what you did well builds confidence and reinforces positive patterns. This isn't about big achievements or perfect performance. It's about acknowledging the small wins that add up to create a fulfilling life. Maybe you chose to respond calmly in a stressful situation instead of reacting emotionally. Maybe you really listened to someone who needed to be heard. Maybe you made a healthy choice when the unhealthy option would have been easier. By consciously acknowledging these positive choices, you increase the likelihood you'll make similar choices tomorrow. You're literally rewiring your brain to notice and repeat successful patterns. Question 2. What could I have handled differently? Notice I didn't say, "What did I do wrong?" or "How did I fail?" This reframing is crucial because it approaches mistakes with curiosity rather than judgment. It positions setbacks as learning opportunities rather than character flaws. This question helps you identify areas for growth without triggering shame or self-criticism. You're acknowledging you always have choices and can learn to make better ones in the future. For example, instead of thinking, "I'm terrible at difficult conversations" after a meeting that didn't go well, you might reflect, "I could have prepared more thoroughly and practiced staying calm when challenged." This perspective empowers you to improve rather than just beating yourself up. Question 3. What am I grateful for from today? This question ensures your reflection practice contributes to your overall positivity and emotional well-being. Even on difficult days, there are usually small moments of grace, kindness, or beauty you can acknowledge. Gratitude and reflection isn't just about listing obvious blessings. It's about developing the ability to find value in unexpected places. Maybe you're grateful for the coworker who challenged your idea because it forced you to think more deeply. Maybe you're grateful for the traffic that gave you time to listen to that podcast. Maybe you're grateful for the difficult conversation that finally cleared the air. As you develop this practice, you can add layers that deepen your self-awareness and accelerate your growth. One powerful addition is emotional reflection. What emotions did I experience today and what triggered them? This helps you become more aware of your emotional patterns and the situations that tend to throw you off balance. For instance, you might notice you always feel anxious after checking social media, or that you feel energized after spending time in nature, or that certain types of conversations leave you drained. This awareness allows you to make more intentional choices about how you spend your time and energy. Another valuable component is relationship reflection. How did I show up in my relationships today? This isn't about judging whether others treated you well. It's about taking responsibility for your own role in your relationships. Maybe you realize you were more patient with your kids today, or that you listened more carefully to your partner, or that you were supportive of a colleague who was struggling, or maybe you recognize you were distracted during conversations, or that you reacted defensively when someone gave you feedback. This type of reflection helps you become more intentional about the kind of person you want to be in relationships. You can also include future-focused reflection. Based on what I learned today, how do I want to approach tomorrow? This connects your reflection to action, ensuring insights translate into changed behavior. Maybe you set an intention to be more present during conversations, or plan to take breaks throughout the day to manage stress, or decide to speak up in a situation where you normally stay silent. The key to making reflection sustainable is keeping it simple and consistent. Find a time that works for your schedule, maybe during your morning coffee, your commute, or right before bed. Start with just 5 to 10 minutes and focus on consistency rather than perfection. You might reflect silently, write in a journal, or record voice memos to yourself. The format matters less than the consistency and quality of attention you bring. Over time, daily reflection creates a positive feedback loop. The more you reflect leads to the more conscious you become during daily experiences. The better choices you make, the more positive experiences you have to reflect on. I've been doing this practice for 3 years now, and I can honestly say it's one of the most transformative habits I've ever developed. I catch myself making better decisions in real time because I'm more aware of my patterns. I learn from challenges faster because I'm actively extracting lessons. And I feel more in control of my life because I'm consciously creating it rather than just reacting to it. Reflection transforms you from someone life happens to into someone who learns and grows from everything life brings. Building unshakable resilience, becoming stronger through struggle. Let's get real about something. Life is going to test you. This isn't pessimism, it's reality. You will face setbacks, disappointments, losses, and challenges that shake you. The question isn't whether these things will happen. The question is how you'll respond when they do. Mental resilience isn't about being tough or emotionless. It's not about pretending difficult things don't hurt or that you're unaffected by life's challenges. True resilience is the ability to feel the full impact of difficult experiences while maintaining your capacity to recover, learn, and keep moving forward. Think of resilience like bamboo in a hurricane. Bamboo bends almost to the ground when the wind hits, looking like it's about to snap. But it has deep roots and flexible strength, so it bends without breaking. When the storm passes, it springs back up. That's resilience, not rigid toughness, but flexible strength. Building mental resilience is like developing any other capacity. It requires consistent practice and gradual progression. You don't build physical strength by trying to lift the heaviest weight on day one. Similarly, you build mental resilience by practicing with smaller challenges so you're prepared when bigger ones arrive. One of the most important components of resilience is cognitive flexibility, the ability to adapt your thinking when circumstances change. Most people get stuck in rigid thought patterns that worked in one situation but become obstacles in new situations. For example, maybe you grew up learning that asking for help meant you were weak. That belief might have helped you become independent, but as an adult, it might prevent you from building the support network you need. Cognitive flexibility means recognizing when old patterns no longer serve you and developing new ways of thinking and responding. I learned this during one of the most challenging periods of my career. I'd built a successful side business using strategies that worked brilliantly in a growing market. But when the economy shifted, those same strategies started failing. My first instinct was to work harder, using the same approaches. But the harder I worked, the worse things got. The breakthrough came when I realized I needed to completely change my thinking about my business. Instead of trying to force old strategies to work in new circumstances, I had to develop entirely new approaches. This required letting go of methods I'd become attached to and being willing to experiment in unfamiliar territory. The process was uncomfortable and uncertain, but it taught me I was capable of adapting to changes that initially seemed overwhelming. The business not only recovered, it became more successful than it had ever been, and I learned that I could handle way more than I thought I could. Another crucial element of resilience is what I call meaning-making ability, the capacity to find purpose and significance even in difficult experiences. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, observed that concentration camp prisoners who survived weren't necessarily the physically strongest. They were the ones who were able to find meaning in their suffering. This doesn't mean you should be grateful for trauma or pretend bad things are good. It means developing the ability to extract value, learning, or purpose from even the most challenging circumstances. When you can find meaning in difficulty, it transforms from something that happens to you into something that contributes to your growth, wisdom, or ability to help others. A powerful practice for building meaning-making ability is asking, how might this experience, as difficult as it is, prepare me to help others who face similar challenges? Or what strengths is this situation calling me to develop that I might not have discovered otherwise? I once knew someone named Patricia who went through a devastating health crisis. The diagnosis, treatment, and recovery were brutal. The physical pain was intense, but the emotional toll was even worse. But over time, Patricia found meaning in her experience by becoming an advocate for others facing similar health challenges. Her own pain gave her deep empathy and understanding that allowed her to help others in ways someone who hadn't experienced that struggle simply couldn't. This didn't make her illness worth it or eliminate her pain, but it transformed a purely painful experience into something that also contributed to healing and hope for others. Building resilience also requires developing emotional regulation skills, the ability to experience intense emotions without being overwhelmed or controlled by them. This connects to the emotional resetting techniques we discussed earlier, but at a deeper level. Emotional regulation isn't about suppressing feelings or faking positivity. It's about learning to ride emotional waves rather than being knocked over by them. One powerful emotional regulation technique is called emotional labeling. When you're experiencing a strong emotion, simply naming it accurately, can this presentation, or I'm feeling this presentation, or I'm feeling disappointed about not getting that opportunity, or I'm feeling overwhelmed by all these demands. This simple practice activates the logical part of your brain and reduces the emotional hijacking that prevents clear thinking. Resilience also requires building what I call recovery rituals, specific practices that help you bounce back more quickly from setbacks. These are different for everyone, but they typically include elements that restore your physical energy, emotional balance, and mental clarity. Your recovery rituals might include physical activities like exercise or walks in nature, creative outlets like music or journaling, social connections with supportive people, spiritual practices like meditation, or simple comfort activities like reading or taking a bath. The key is identifying what actually helps you recover and using these practices proactively rather than waiting until you're in crisis. Think of recovery rituals like maintenance for your mental and emotional well-being. Regular practices that keep you functioning at your best and help you bounce back quickly when life knocks you down. Perhaps most importantly, building resilience requires accepting that struggle is a normal part of the human experience, not a sign something's wrong with you or your life. Our culture promotes the illusion that life should be easy and comfortable, that if you're doing things right, you shouldn't face significant challenges. But this expectation actually makes you less resilient because it makes you interpret normal difficulties as evidence of failure. When you accept that challenges are an inevitable part of growth, that your worth isn't determined by how smoothly your life goes, you develop the emotional strength to handle whatever comes your way. Resilience isn't built overnight, and it's not a destination you arrive at once and for all. It's an ongoing practice of developing the mental, emotional, and spiritual resources that allow you to not just survive life's challenges, but to emerge from them stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than before. Visualization, programming your mind for success. Your mind is the most powerful creative tool you possess, but most people use it like a broken TV stuck on the disaster channel. They spend their mental energy visualizing worst-case scenarios, replaying past failures, and imagining all the ways things could go wrong. But what if I told you this same mental faculty could be your greatest ally in creating calm, positivity, and success? Visualization isn't wishful thinking or fantasy. It's a scientifically proven technique that programs your subconscious mind, primes your nervous system, and literally rewires your brain to recognize and create the outcomes you desire. When you visualize effectively, you're essentially rehearsing success in your mind, making it more likely to occur in reality. The reason visualization works so powerfully is that your brain doesn't know the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. When you imagine yourself handling a challenging situation with calm confidence, your brain creates the same neural pathways as if you'd actually done it. This mental rehearsal prepares you to respond skillfully when similar situations arise in real life. Athletes have been using visualization for decades. Olympic swimmers visualize every stroke of their races. Professional golfers mentally rehearse their swings. Basketball players visualize successful shots before stepping up to the line. These aren't just feel-good exercises. They're proven methods for programming the mind and body for peak performance. But visualization isn't just for athletes. You can use this technique to program yourself for calm responses to stress, positive interactions with difficult people, successful presentations at work, or any other outcome you want to create. Let me share how visualization transformed my relationship with public speaking. For years, I was terrified of speaking in front of groups. My heart would race, my palms would sweat, my mind would go blank. The fear was so intense that I'd spend weeks beforehand imagining all the ways the presentation could go wrong. Then I learned about visualization and decided to flip the script. Instead of mentally rehearsing disaster, I began spending 10 minutes each day visualizing myself giving presentations with calm confidence. I imagined walking into the room feeling relaxed and prepared. I visualized making eye contact with the audience, speaking clearly and engagingly, even enjoying the interaction. I pictured receiving positive feedback afterwards. At first, These visualizations felt forced and unrealistic, but I continued the practice consistently, and gradually something shifted. When the day of my next presentation arrived, I felt calmer than I had in years. During the presentation, I found myself naturally doing many of the things I'd visualized, making eye contact, speaking clearly, even enjoying the experience. That's when I understood. Visualization isn't about creating false confidence. It's about programming your mind and nervous system to respond resourcefully rather than reactively. Here's how to practice effective visualization. First, choose a specific situation that typically triggers stress or anxiety. It might be a difficult conversation, a work challenge, or simply getting through a busy day while maintaining peace. Find a quiet place where you won't be interrupted and close your eyes. Take several deep breaths to relax your body and calm your mind. Now imagine yourself in that challenging situation, but see yourself responding exactly as you'd like to respond. Make the visualization as detailed and vivid as possible. See yourself with confident posture. Hear yourself speaking with a calm, clear voice. Feel the sensation of being relaxed and centered in your body. Notice positive responses from others around you. Experience the satisfaction of handling the situation skillfully. Engage all your senses. Don't just see the scene. Hear the sounds. Feel the physical sensations. Even imagine relevant smells or tastes. The more senses you involve, the more real the experience becomes to your subconscious. If negative thoughts or images try to intrude, gently redirect your attention back to the positive outcome you're creating. Don't fight the negative thoughts. Just acknowledge them and return focus to what you want to experience. Practice this visualization for 5 to 10 minutes daily, ideally at the same time each day. Consistency is more important than duration. But visualization goes beyond just preparing for specific challenges. You can also use it to cultivate general states of calm and positivity. One powerful technique is identity visualization. Instead of just imagining yourself handling specific situations well, visualize yourself as someone who naturally embodies the qualities you want to develop. See yourself as a naturally calm person, someone who radiates positivity, someone who handles challenges with grace and wisdom. Create a detailed mental image of this ideal version of yourself. How do they move through the world? How do they treat others? How do they respond to stress? Spend time each day mentally stepping into this identity and experiencing what it feels like to be this person. I worked with someone named Michael who struggled with chronic anxiety and negative thinking. He began practicing identity visualization, imagining himself as someone who was naturally peaceful and optimistic. He visualized waking up feeling grateful, approaching challenges with curiosity rather than fear, maintaining calm even in stressful situations. Over time, Michael noticed he was naturally becoming more like the person he was visualizing. His default mental state shifted from anxiety to calm. The visualization had literally reprogrammed his identity at a subconscious level. Another powerful application is creating what I call sanctuary spaces in your mind. Detailed mental environments you can visit whenever you need to restore calm and positivity. Your sanctuary might be a peaceful beach where you hear waves and feel warm sand beneath your feet. A cozy cabin in the mountains surrounded by tall trees. a beautiful garden filled with flowers and birdsong. The key is creating a space that feels completely safe, peaceful, and restorative to you. Spend time developing the details. What does it look like? What sounds do you hear? What does the air smell like? What's the temperature? Are there special objects or features that make this space meaningful? Once you've created your mental sanctuary, you can visit it whenever you need peace. Feeling overwhelmed at work? Take 2 minutes to close your eyes and mentally transport yourself to your sanctuary, lying in bed with racing thoughts. Spend time in your peaceful mental space. This technique is powerful because it gives you a reliable way to access calm regardless of external circumstances. Your sanctuary is always available, no matter where you are or what's happening around you. Remember, your mind is constantly creating images and scenarios anyway. The question is whether you're going to let it run wild with fearful fantasies or consciously direct it toward the outcomes you actually want to create. The discipline of small daily habits. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your daily habits. This might sound simple, but it's profoundly true. Every thought you think repeatedly, every action you take consistently, every choice you make habitually is literally shaping your brain, your body, and your life experience. Most people underestimate the power of small, consistent actions because the results aren't immediately visible. They're looking for dramatic transformations overnight. But real change occurs through the compound effect of tiny improvements repeated consistently over time. Think about it this way. If you improved just 1% every day for a year, you'd be 37 times better by year's end. But if you got 1% worse every day for a year, you'd decline nearly to zero. This is the mathematics of habit formation. Small changes seem insignificant in the moment, but they compound over time to create massive results. The challenge is our brains are wired for immediate gratification, not long-term thinking. When you meditate for 10 minutes instead of scrolling social media, the immediate payoff seems minimal. When you choose a healthy meal over junk food, you don't instantly feel dramatically different. When you practice gratitude instead of complaining, the world doesn't immediately transform. But here's what happens when you make these small, positive choices consistently. Your brain literally rewires itself to support these new patterns. Your nervous system adapts to higher levels of calm. Your body becomes stronger and more resilient. Your relationships improve because you're showing up as a better version of yourself. The key to sustainable habit formation is starting much smaller than you think you should. Most people fail at building new habits because they try to change too much too quickly. They decide they're going to meditate for an hour, exercise for 90 minutes, journal for 30 minutes, and completely overhaul their diet, all at the same time. This approach almost always leads to overwhelm and eventual abandonment. Instead, start with what I call micro habits. Actions so small they're almost impossible to fail at, but that point you toward your larger goals. Want to develop a meditation practice? Don't start with 30-minute sessions. Start with 1 minute. If 1 minute feels too long, start with 3 deep breaths. Want to exercise regularly? Don't commit to hour-long gym sessions. Start with 10 push-ups or a 5-minute walk. The goal of micro habits isn't to create dramatic results immediately. It's to establish the neural pathways and identity shifts that will support larger changes over time. When you meditate for 1 minute consistently for a month, you become someone who meditates. When you do 10 push-ups every day for a month, you become someone who exercises. These identity shifts are far more powerful than willpower in sustaining long-term change. Let me share how this transformed my morning routine. For years, I had chaotic mornings that set a stressful tone for my entire day. I'd wake up rushed, immediately check my phone, gulp down coffee while mentally rehearsing my to-do list, and launch into my day feeling reactive and overwhelmed. I knew I wanted a more peaceful morning routine, but every time I tried implementing elaborate rituals, meditation, journaling, exercise, healthy breakfast, I'd stick with it for a few days before abandoning it as too time-consuming. Finally, I decided to start with just one tiny change, drinking a full glass of water before doing anything else. That's it. No meditation, no journaling, no exercise, just water. This habit took less than a minute and was virtually impossible to skip. After a month of consistently drinking water first thing, I added another micro habit: 5 deep breaths before checking my phone. Gradually, over 6 months, I built a morning routine that included hydration, breathing exercises, brief meditation, gratitude journaling, and light movement. But I never would have sustained this routine if I'd tried to implement it all at once. Each small habit built momentum for the next one. The power of micro habits is they remove the friction and resistance that usually sabotage good intentions. When an action requires minimal willpower, you can maintain it even on days when you feel tired, busy, or unmotivated. But habit formation isn't just about adding positive behaviors. It's also about replacing negative patterns that steal your calm and positivity. Common negative habits include checking phones immediately upon waking, complaining as a default way of processing experiences, rushing through activities without presence or awareness. The key to changing negative habits is replacing them with positive alternatives, not trying to eliminate them through willpower alone. Instead of trying to stop checking your phone in the morning, create a positive routine that happens before you allow phone access. Instead of trying to stop complaining, practice finding one positive aspect of challenging situations. One transformative daily habit is what I call mindful transitions, taking a brief pause between activities to center yourself and set an intention. When you finish one task and are about to begin another, take 3 conscious breaths and ask, "How do I want to show up for this next activity?" This simple practice, done consistently throughout the day, maintains your connection to calm presence rather than allowing you to get swept away by constant doing. Another powerful habit is appreciation scanning. At least 3 times daily, pause for 30 seconds and consciously notice something you can appreciate in that moment. The feeling of sunlight on your skin, the taste of your coffee, a kind gesture from a colleague, the fact that your body is healthy and functioning. This practice trains your brain to notice positive aspects of your experience rather than only focusing on problems. The beautiful thing about positive daily habits is they create positive affect spirals. When you start your day with practices that cultivate calm and positivity, you're more likely to make positive choices throughout the day. These positive choices reinforce your well-being, which makes it easier to maintain your positive habits. Before long, living with calm and positivity becomes your default way of being, rather than something you have to effort to create. Remember, you don't have to be perfect. The goal is consistency, not perfection. If you miss a day or two, simply return to your practice without judgment. The compound effect of positive habits is so powerful that small imperfections in execution don't derail the overall benefits. Part 5. Final. The Art of Letting Go. Freedom through release. One of the greatest sources of suffering in life is our tendency to hold on to things that are meant to flow through us, not stick to us. We grip tightly to past hurts, future worries, other people's opinions, outcomes we can't control, and versions of ourselves that no longer serve us. This mental and emotional clinging creates suffering and prevents us from experiencing the natural peace that emerges when we learn to let go. Letting go isn't about giving up or becoming passive. It's about releasing your attachment to specific outcomes while remaining fully engaged in the process of living. It's the difference between rowing your boat down the river while fighting the current versus rowing with the current's flow. Most people resist letting go because they confuse it with not caring or surrendering their power. But the opposite is true. When you let go of what you can't control, you free up enormous energy to focus on what you can influence. When you release attachment to specific outcomes, you become more effective at creating positive outcomes because you're not paralyzed by fear of failure. Let me share a story that illustrates this. A few years ago, I was working on a project that meant everything to me. I'd invested months of time, significant money, and massive emotional energy into making it successful. As the deadline approached, it became clear that despite my best efforts, the project wasn't going to work out as I'd envisioned. My first reaction was to fight harder. I worked longer hours, spent more money, became increasingly stressed and anxious as I tried to force the outcome I wanted. The harder I fought, the worse things got. I was so attached to my original vision that I couldn't see alternative possibilities that might actually be better. Finally, in a moment of exhaustion and clarity, I made a decision that felt terrifying, but also liberating. I let go. I released my attachment to the specific outcome I'd been fighting for and opened myself to whatever was meant to unfold. This didn't mean I stopped working, but I stopped trying to control every detail of how it would turn out. Within days of making this mental shift, new opportunities appeared that I hadn't noticed before because I'd been so focused on forcing my original plan. The project evolved in a direction I never could have imagined, and the final result was actually better than what I'd originally envisioned. That experience taught me that letting go isn't about giving up on your dreams. It's about holding them lightly enough that you can recognize when life is offering you something even better. One of the most challenging things to let go of is the past. Many people carry old hurts, regrets, and resentments like heavy bags they refuse to set down. They replay conversations they wish had gone differently, obsess over opportunities they missed, punish themselves for mistakes made years ago. But here's the truth. The past exists only in your memory. Every moment you spend reliving past events is a moment you're not present for the opportunities available right now. Letting go of the past doesn't mean forgetting important lessons or pretending difficult things didn't happen. It means extracting whatever wisdom the experience offered and then releasing the emotional charge that keeps you trapped. A powerful practice for releasing the past is what I call the gratitude release ceremony. Think of a past experience you've been carrying as a burden, a relationship that ended badly, a mistake that still haunts you, an opportunity you feel you missed. Write a letter to this experience, acknowledge the pain it caused, but also recognize any gifts it brought you. Maybe a difficult relationship taught you about boundaries. Maybe a professional failure redirected you toward something better suited to your talents. Maybe a health challenge helped you appreciate your body and prioritize self-care. End the letter by thanking the experience for whatever it taught you. Then ceremonially release it. Burn the letter, bury it, or tear it up and throw it away. The physical act of release helps your subconscious understand you're truly letting go. Just as challenging as releasing the past is letting go of anxiety about the future. Your mind constantly generates scenarios about what might happen, most of which never actually occur. This mental time travel robs you of peace while providing no real benefit. Letting go of future anxiety doesn't mean failing to plan responsibly. It means distinguishing between productive planning and unproductive worry. Productive planning involves taking concrete actions to influence outcomes you care about. Unproductive worry involves mentally rehearsing scenarios you can't control or spending emotional energy on events that may never happen. When you notice your mind spinning stories about future disasters, gently bring your attention back to the present by asking, what action can I take right now to influence this situation positively? If there's an action you can take, take it. If there isn't, consciously release the worry and redirect your attention to what's actually happening in your life right now. Another area where letting go is crucial is in relationships. Many people exhaust themselves trying to control how others think, feel, and behave. They take responsibility for other people's emotions, try to manage other people's choices, feel personally responsible when others make decisions they disagree with. But here's a fundamental truth. You can only control your own thoughts, feelings, and actions. Every moment you spend trying to change someone else is a moment you're not spending on becoming the best version of yourself. Letting go in relationships means loving people without trying to control them. It means expressing your needs clearly while accepting that others have the right to respond however they choose. It means offering support when asked while recognizing other people's problems aren't yours to solve. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent. It means caring deeply while holding lightly. Perhaps the most profound letting go involves releasing outdated versions of yourself. As you grow and evolve, old aspects of your identity become like clothes that no longer fit. The person you were 5 years ago, with their fears, limitations, and coping strategies, may no longer serve who you're becoming. Many people resist this evolution because their identity feels like the one stable thing in a changing world. But clinging to outdated self-concepts actually prevents the growth that would bring greater happiness. Letting go of old versions of yourself means being willing to say, "That's not who I am anymore." Maybe you used to be someone who never spoke up, but you've developed confidence. Maybe you used to avoid challenges, but you've discovered you're resilient. Maybe you used to define yourself by your wounds, but you're ready to be known for your strengths. This process can feel disorienting because it requires releasing familiar patterns and stepping into unknown territory. But it's also incredibly liberating because it frees you from the prison of limiting self-concepts. The practice of letting go is ongoing, not a one-time event. Life constantly offers you opportunities to release what no longer serves you and embrace what wants to emerge. Each time you choose to let go, you create space for something new and potentially wonderful to enter your life. Building relationships that lift you up. Human beings are wired for connection. Your relationships have more impact on your mental health and life satisfaction than almost any other factor. Yet most people stumble through relationships unconsciously, reacting to others rather than consciously creating the kinds of connections that nourish everyone involved. The quality of your relationships directly affects your ability to stay calm and positive. When your relationships are filled with conflict and negativity, it's nearly impossible to maintain inner peace. But when your relationships are characterized by mutual respect and genuine care, they become a source of strength that helps you navigate life's challenges. The foundation of positive relationships is taking full responsibility for your own contribution to every interaction while releasing responsibility for how others choose to respond. This might sound simple, but it's actually a profound shift. Most people enter relationships with an unconscious scorecard, constantly monitoring whether they're getting as much as they're giving, whether others are treating them fairly, whether their needs are being met. This scorecard mentality creates resentment because it positions relationships as transactions rather than connections. When you take full responsibility for your contribution, regardless of how others respond, you become a source of positive energy rather than someone who needs positive energy from others to feel good. I had a family member who was chronically negative and critical. For years, I tried to change their behavior through arguments, logic, emotional appeals, and eventually avoidance. Nothing worked, and our interactions were consistently stressful. Finally, I decided to experiment with taking complete responsibility for my own contribution while releasing any expectation they would change. Instead of defending myself against criticism, I listened with curiosity. Instead of responding to negativity with my own negativity, I looked for something positive to focus on. Instead of avoiding them, I engaged with kindness while maintaining clear boundaries. The transformation was remarkable. While their fundamental personality didn't change dramatically, our interactions became much more peaceful and occasionally even enjoyable. More importantly, I stopped feeling drained after spending time with them because I was no longer fighting a battle I couldn't win. One of the most powerful relationship skills is empathetic listening. The ability to truly understand another person's perspective without immediately trying to fix argue with, or judge what they're sharing. Most people listen primarily to formulate their response rather than to understand. Empathetic listening involves setting aside your own agenda and giving full attention to understanding how the other person sees and feels about their situation. It means listening for the emotions behind the words, not just the literal content. When someone shares a problem, your first instinct might be to offer solutions or explain why they shouldn't feel the way they're feeling. But often, what people need most is simply to feel heard and understood. A simple phrase that demonstrates empathetic listening. That sounds really difficult. Tell me more about how you're feeling about this. This response shows you're focused on understanding their experience rather than rushing to fix or change it. Another crucial element of positive relationships is generous interpretation, choosing to attribute positive motives to others' actions whenever reasonably possible. Most relationship conflicts arise from negative assumptions about why someone did something. When someone is late, you can assume they don't respect your time, or you can assume they encountered unexpected delays. When someone gives critical feedback, you can assume they're trying to hurt you, or you can assume they're trying to help you improve. The interpretation you choose has a huge impact on how you feel and respond. Negative interpretations create resentment. Generous interpretations create understanding and connection. This doesn't mean being naive or ignoring genuine red flags. It means giving people the benefit of the doubt when their actions are ambiguous. Building positive relationships also requires the courage to be vulnerable, to share your authentic thoughts and feelings rather than hiding behind a perfect facade. Vulnerability is what transforms superficial connections into meaningful relationships. Many people resist vulnerability because they're afraid of being judged or rejected. But the irony is that when you try to protect yourself by hiding your authentic self, you prevent the very connections that would make you feel safe. Vulnerability doesn't mean sharing your deepest secrets with everyone. It means being genuine about your experience rather than pretending to be someone you're not. The beautiful thing about vulnerability is it gives others permission to be vulnerable as well. When you're genuine about your imperfections and authentic emotions, it creates space for others to do the same. This mutual authenticity creates the deep connections that nourish the soul. Remember, positive relationships require healthy boundaries, clear guidelines about what you will and won't accept. Boundaries aren't walls. They're guidelines that allow relationships to flourish within a framework of mutual respect. When you communicate your limits clearly and kindly, most people will respect them. Those who don't reveal, they're more interested in what you can do for them than in genuine relationship. Creating a life of purpose and meaning. The final piece of staying calm and positive is connecting with something larger than your immediate concerns and daily challenges. When your life has meaning and purpose, you develop resilience and inner strength that can weather any storm. Without this deeper sense of significance, even small problems can feel overwhelming because they're not balanced by a larger context of meaning. Purpose isn't something you find lying around waiting to be discovered. It's something you create through conscious choice and consistent action. It emerges from the intersection of your values, your talents, and the needs you see in the world around you. Many people spend their lives waiting for their purpose to be revealed in some dramatic moment of clarity. But for most people, purpose develops gradually through paying attention to what energizes you, what problems you care about solving, and what activities make you feel most alive. Purpose doesn't have to be grandiose or world-changing. Your purpose might be raising children who feel loved and confident, creating art that brings beauty into the world, providing excellent service that brightens people's days, being the kind of friend others can count on. The key is that your purpose connects you to something beyond your own immediate comfort. It gives you a reason to get up in the morning that's bigger than just getting through another day. It provides a framework for making decisions and a source of motivation during challenging times. Let me share how I discovered my sense of purpose. For years, I felt successful on the outside, but empty inside. I had a good career, financial security, comfortable lifestyle, but something was missing. The turning point came when I started mentoring young professionals who were struggling to find their direction. These people were facing incredible challenges with limited support, and I found myself deeply moved by their resilience. As I spent time with them, I realized my favorite part of work and life was helping others see possibilities they hadn't recognized and develop skills they didn't know they possessed. I started understanding that my purpose was about empowering people to become the best versions of themselves. This realization didn't require me to completely change my career, but it shifted how I approached everything. I began looking for ways to incorporate mentoring into my work. I started paying more attention to opportunities to encourage the people around me. Having this sense of purpose transformed how I experienced daily life. Challenges that used to feel overwhelming began to feel like opportunities to develop strength I could share with others. Setbacks became learning experiences that would help me better understand and support people facing similar difficulties. Purpose provides what psychologists call post-traumatic growth, the ability to become stronger through difficult experiences rather than just surviving them. When you know your struggles are contributing to something meaningful, it doesn't eliminate the pain, but it gives the pain significance and value. Creating a life of purpose also requires cultivating contribution consciousness, the awareness that your actions, words, and energy are constantly impacting the world around you. Most people underestimate their influence. You might think your mood only affects you, but you're constantly influencing everyone you interact with, often in ways you'll never know about. The smile you give a stranger might be exactly what they needed. The patience you show a frustrated person might restore their faith in humanity. The encouragement you offer someone struggling might give them confidence to persevere. When you become conscious of your constant influence, it transforms how you move through the world. You begin to see every interaction as an opportunity to contribute something positive. This awareness creates what I call purposeful presence, the practice of bringing your best self to every situation, not just the ones that feel important. It means treating the cashier with the same kindness you'd show your best friend, bringing patience to difficult conversations, choosing to be a source of light in a world that often feels dark. Another essential element is developing legacy thinking, considering how you want to be remembered and what impact you want your life to have. This isn't about ego or fame. It's about understanding that your life matters and the choices you make today are creating the story that will be told about you. Legacy thinking helps you make decisions from a place of long-term wisdom rather than short-term impulse. When facing a difficult choice, ask yourself, what would the person I want to become do in this situation? Your legacy isn't just professional accomplishments. It's also about the kind of person you were in relationships, how you treated people who couldn't do anything for you, and the values you lived by when no one was watching. I think about someone I knew named Eleanor, who worked as a school cafeteria worker for 30 years. By many measures, her job wasn't considered important or prestigious, but Eleanor treated every child who came through her line like they were the most important person in the world. She learned their names, asked about their day, always had a kind word or encouraging smile. When Eleanor retired, hundreds of former students attended her party. Many shared stories about how her kindness had impacted their lives during difficult periods. Eleanor's legacy wasn't about career achievement. It was about thousands of small moments where she chose to bring love and encouragement into children's lives. Her life had profound meaning because she understood that every interaction was an opportunity to make someone's day brighter. Creating meaning also involves developing transcendent goals, aspirations that connect you to something larger than personal success. These might be environmental goals, social goals like reducing inequality, or spiritual goals like growing in wisdom and compassion. Transcendent goals provide perspective during difficult times because they remind you that your temporary struggles are part of a larger journey of growth and contribution. One powerful practice is ripple effect meditation, spending a few minutes imagining the positive impact your actions are having on the world. Think about how your kindness to one person might inspire them to be kinder to others. Consider how your commitment to growth might encourage others to work on themselves. Reflect on how your efforts to stay calm might create a more peaceful environment for everyone in your life. This practice helps you see that your individual well-being is connected to the well-being of everyone around you. When you work on staying calm and positive, you're not just helping yourself. You're contributing to a more peaceful world for everyone. Creating meaning also requires accepting that life includes suffering, loss, and challenges that can't be avoided. Many people lose their sense of purpose when they encounter experiences that don't fit their vision of how life should work. But meaning often emerges not despite difficulties, but through them. The challenges you face are opportunities to develop qualities like resilience, compassion, and wisdom. The losses you experience can deepen your appreciation for what remains. The struggles you endure can give you empathy for others and wisdom to offer them. This doesn't mean seeking out suffering. It means that when difficult experiences are inevitable, you can choose to extract meaning and growth from them. Finally, creating a life of meaning requires present-moment purpose, understanding that meaning isn't just about long-term goals, but about how you choose to show up in each ordinary moment. Every conversation is an opportunity to practice deep listening, Every challenging situation is a chance to respond with wisdom. Every interaction is an opportunity to contribute something positive. When you approach life this way, you don't have to wait to feel that your life has meaning. Your life has meaning right now, in this moment, through your choice to live consciously and contribute positively to the world around you. Your journey starts now. We've covered so much ground together, and I want you to know everything we've discussed isn't just information to consume. It's a set of practices to implement. The techniques for staying calm and positive work, but only if you work them. The insights about resilience, relationships, and meaning are valuable, but only if you apply them to your daily life. So here's what I want you to do. Don't try to implement everything at once. That's a recipe for overwhelm and eventual abandonment. Instead, choose one or two practices that resonated most strongly with you. Maybe it's the calm method for emotional resetting. Maybe it's daily reflection. Maybe it's micro habits. Maybe it's visualization or letting go. Commit to implementing those practices consistently for the next 30 days. Give yourself the gift of sustained practice. Let these tools become part of who you are, not just concepts you once read about. Because here's the truth. Your calm and positivity aren't dependent on your circumstances being perfect. They're skills you can develop, qualities you can cultivate, choices you can make regardless of what's happening around you. You have everything you need within you right now to create the inner peace and positive outlook you desire. The world needs people who have learned to stay calm in chaos and positive in the face of challenge. By doing this work for yourself, you're not just improving your own life, you're becoming a source of stability and hope for everyone whose life you touch. Your journey toward lasting calm and positivity doesn't start someday. It doesn't start when circumstances are perfect. It doesn't start when you feel ready. Your journey starts right now, right here, in this moment. Take the first step, then the next one, then the next. Before you know it, you'll look back and realize you've become the peaceful, positive person you always knew you could be. The person who doesn't just survive life's challenges, but grows through them. The person who doesn't just get through the day, but creates meaning from each moment. The person who doesn't just exist, but truly lives. That person is already inside you, waiting to emerge. All you have to do is begin. And remember, I'm cheering for you every step of the way. Now go out there and create the calm, positive life you deserve. You've got this.